Okay, let's do this. Been sitting on this one for ever, waiting for it to finally land, waiting before I shared it. And this one's just for the men. This one's for the fellas. It's fine if everyone watches it, but this one's directed towards the men. If you're sincere in your awakening process, whether you're just starting or you've already had a shift, you're going to come up against two of the most terrifying moments that you may ever experience in your life. And I'm going to tell you about them because I've experienced them multiple times. The first one is when you're asked to confront what you now call shadow work, what I call the inner child. We're not trained for this. We're not built for this. We're built to break, destroy, conquer, instruct, rule. And at some point, that inner child is going to want to be seen, to be heard, and to be felt. And for most of us, especially if we've been raised in rough environments, we're going to view this as a sign of weakness. And you're going to get to the point, though, where the awakening stops, where you can't hide out in the transcendent anymore, where you can't distract with money, jobs, relationships, accomplishments, retreats, meditation, any of it. I came up against this, and I'll bring up the second one after this. I came up against this more times than I ever cared to. And it was fucking terrifying. Even the word, the phrase inner child scared me, scared the crap out of me, thinking about what's this inner child? What weakness do I have to display? What weakness are we talking about here? What frivolity is this? When I started looking at it and framing it in a very, very specific way, and as my awakening progressed, and I started to see where I had deep pockets of trauma, deep pockets of reactivity, I started to see that they could only come from one place. They could come from the wounds I experienced as a little boy. And when I began to look at it that way and frame it that way, and I had this deep gut sense that I couldn't even begin to describe, that said that there was no other way but to feel through these. And in that moment, terror sat in. And something else came online as well, too, that said, I have to face this. Now, I'm not going to say that I did it with any level of success in the beginning, not even a little bit. But the more I moved through it, the more I realized that this was the path. This was the path for us, for men. The other option was to stay stuck in the absolute, to stay stuck in cold, distant transcendence, to take on the role of a teacher, to lecture other people about my awakening or my experiences, to continue to show those I loved that I was the strong one, when in fact I was the most scared one in the room. So someone else taught me, and I'm going to pass it on to, I began to change the definition of shadow work and looking at these emotions that would come up as negative, and I reframed it. And as soon as I did this one thing, everything changed for me. When I have reactivity that doesn't match what the situation is, when I'm in rage, when I'm hostile, when I'm covering up fear, when I feel like crying and I swallow those tears down, that is what I call little Teddy. And in my mind, I picture him. It's an actual visual where I see him. When I was a kid, I was blonde, I was cute, and I was very innocent, very naive. And the world was completely full of wonder until life happened. So when I picture little Teddy, I see him about this size. And I see the warmth in his smile. Little Teddy never knew a stranger, is what my mom used to tell me. That I was friendly to everybody. That I was deeply sensitive. And every time I have an emotion, something that I absolutely struggle with, I start to visualize little Teddy, and he's got this emotion in his hands. And all he is doing is bringing it to me, to Ted, to adult Ted, who's now the adult in the room, and saying, can I stay? Can you just look at this for me? Can you just sit with me and help me feel through this? And as soon as that image went in my mind, the thought of pushing him away, sending him back into the darkness where he had been sitting for going on 5 decades now, was unbearable. And I remember the first time I visualized it, and I still get a little choked up about it, of sending him back without me putting my arm around him, without me telling him it's okay, that I've got you now, that I'll protect you, that you can sit and you can stay as long as you want. And I use those visuals to literally break my resistance to feeling what I was feeling, to just allow him. And I talked to him to allow him to be here. And I said, you don't ever have to go. You can keep this one feeling, or you can keep reaching behind you and bringing more stuff out of the darkness. And you and I together are going to bring it into the light. And that's pretty fancy talk, but bringing it into the light simply means we're going to feel it together. And I got you. I talked to him and I said, I fucking got you. There was no other choice for me. I'd been years after a first shift in awakening and pretty impressed with myself, thinking I knew things. And life began to present situations to me where I had no other option. And up until that time, I had sought relief in anything, in my accomplishments as a tattoo artist, in my relationships where I turned my partners into my mothers, in joking around and being bigger or stronger or smarter or more clever than the men around me. And I did everyone a disservice. It was quite innocent. And yet I had to bring that to the table too and feel that bit of shame and wonder. Later on I knew that the people closest to me could see it. Thankfully, they were gracious enough to not really put me on blast too much and to make that shame even worse. But I had to feel that as well. So this is what I did, is I kept inviting little Teddy. And I kept saying, you can be here. And I did really remedial shit, rubbing my chest, talking to him out loud. Maybe I was in the grocery store, maybe I was on a walk in the park. And I let him stay. And the more I did it, the more he and I began to fuse into one thing. And then he started to have less and less stuff to bring. It was intermittent for a while. Sometimes he would just bring little bits, and I would say, even this reactivity here, this feeling that he's bringing, I would need to address, even if it was just a little pink, a little flash. Other times he brought great big piles of this stuff, and it incapacitated me. But it got to the point where I refused to take it out on other people. It was destroying my relationships, completely halting the continued unraveling of the identity. And then I no longer became afraid of it. Or even when fear showed up, when he brought me fear, I would say, okay, let's be afraid. Let's be fully afraid. I got you. The second thing, and this is usually, that's just getting hip to the fact that we even have an inner child that wants love, that wants healing, that wants to bring those stored emotions that we felt as kids to the table. The second one is usually after we've had a shift and we've seen the inevitability of the process that's unraveling in us. And this is the one we'll face alone. This is the hard one, is that we'll see that there is no other way through, and that we with rare exceptions. Maybe if we're in a group somewhere or we get to talk to a friend or a partner extends us a little bit of care and concern for a short period of time. The terror, the inevitability that once you've started this journey and you've invited that little child in, that it's going to keep going. And you know you're going to have to face it alone. And it's going to come at the worst possible times. It's going to come right before you go to sleep. It's going to come right when you need to make a critical decision. It's going to show up when you're in front of everybody. It's going to come when you least expect it. I've sat there doing all kinds of different stuff. My latest one is trying to put my contacts in when little Teddy shows up and the tears are coming out. And I'm trying to put my fucking contacts back in and I'm just sobbing. So actually I got to be an expert at that. And I cried so much in the last 2 or 3 years of just inviting this inner child, this little me. I couldn't count the tears. I couldn't count them. And yet each one became very precious to me. Each one softened me, even when I didn't know that I was being softened. Each one increased my capacity to love him, to love the people around me, to appreciate life. And it wasn't a one-time thing. It was endless repetition, it seemed like. And there were times where I wanted to throw my hands up, or I reached out and called a friend or a teacher or asked a partner or something of anything, of sending up a flare and going, I need fucking help. And sometimes they would be there. Other times, just because of circumstances in life, they weren't. And I was left to navigate it myself. And that's when the pit in my stomach would show up and the inevitability of knowing I have no idea how long this is going to go. I have no idea when this is going to stop. But I know that this forward progress is inevitable. This continued movement through healing and feeling these wounds was pretty much mandatory. And for some, that may sound a little strange because we can touch into non-duality. We can touch into no self. We can touch into the absolute, the transcendent. We can even have heart openings. But awakening isn't just about knowing what's on the other side of the seeing through the veil. After we've been in the transcendent, and I see so many men stuck there, not knowing it, being quite innocent in doing it, and being so smug that they think that they're in some spot where they can dispense wisdom. I'm not judging them. I lived there for years. But the return back into the body, back into being human, if this process has grabbed us, if we have for one split second been willing to face everything, the return back into the body is mandatory. I don't know how many times I've sat in the dark and cried or journaled or wept or wanted to reach out and had my phone in my hand. And something would stop me and something would say, you got this. And little Teddy would say, you got this. He became more of a seasoned vet at this than me. And then it turned out that he was leading the charge. I realize that's a little backwards, right? But he was saying, Ted, you got this. Keep going. Keep going. It's not going to kill us. It just goes against everything that we've ever learned and we've ever been trained. I was trained that if didn't like it, smash it. And if that didn't work, then I'll medicate it. And that got to an extremes where I suppressed and pushed this little guy back into the dark by doing anything and everything in terms of drugs, alcohol, distraction. So I want to encourage any man that's on this journey to say that there's a bunch of us that have been through this already. You can reach out. You can reach out to talk to, I think it's probably wise to make sure it's another man for the most part. That's a whole other video. It can cause problems in relationships. You can tap your partner or whatever every so often, but I wouldn't make a habit out of it. And this is our responsibility, because otherwise, if we don't do this, if we don't reach out, and we don't begin to move through this, we affect everyone else in our lives. Not only do we affect ourselves, but we affect everyone else in a really, really, really deep way. The extreme examples of this, just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, we've seen the guys that kind of bluster. I call them the chest beaters. You know, and they're the biggest and loudest ones in the room. I spent 4 years in prison with 5,000 of them. Every last one of them was terrified, scared. The bigger they were and the more tattoos they had, the more status they had on the prison yard, the more fear they had. And everyone walking around trying to reestablish this avatar, this protective suit of armor, so as not to let anyone else know that they were the little versions of them that were just terrified. So I want to encourage the guys. This is a necessary part of the path, I think. You want to be on the other side of this. You want to move into this. And I realize it's going to be terrifying. And I realize that a whole lot of us don't even have access to these feelings yet. I was lucky. I was a sensitive kid. I've always been a bit of a crier. So I felt like I kind of had, you know, a little bit of an advantage in that. So when it finally did show up, I was able to slowly release into these tears, into these collapses, into these meltdowns. And I needed every last one of them. I needed that. I needed to be able to surrender into that and then come out of it and go, I feel just a little bit better. I feel 5% lighter. I feel 1% more open. I feel 1% more free. So anybody that's on this path that's doing this, if you've touched into it for just one split second, you have my respect, you have my love, you have my admiration, and you have my encouragement, and you have my prayers, everything, all of it. So thanks for taking the time to listen. I don't normally say this, but I'm open for questions. If you guys want to chat, drop me an email. I'm happy to sit and just hold space with you, just talk about nothing, anything. But just know the invitation's there. And if not me, there's other folks in the awakening community that are around that have been there, that have experienced this. So you are ultimately not alone, even if you will experience an awful lot of it by yourself. So be blessed. Give the little version of you the most love. Give him permission to show up, sit next to you, and see what he brings to the table. Thanks for your time.